Glenn, great to have you. Thank you so much for taking time out.
It's great to be here.
So I gotta ask. We always start with kind of where's your roots? Which fertile soil kind of resulted in this?
Right here in Orlando, before there was a Disney, when it was all orange groves and pastures of cows. I worked at Walt Disney World as a student out of high school and through college as a way to pay for school, and weekends and summers.
What was that like? How old were you when the park opened in '71?
23?
Had to be kind
13,
of
13.
I was going to say, it seemed like something you would remember.
Right. So
What'd you think when you first went into the park? Did you get to go in before you
I did. And the thing that I remember now, looking back at the pictures, is that the trees hadn't grown yet. Everything was very, very, very new. But it was just one trip to the park. Actually, there was a more memorable trip before the park opened when I got to go out on a tour bus and see the construction.
Oh, wow.
And I had no idea that was something that I would be doing a lot later in life, of course.
Sure.
It was very, very memorable. And prior to that, I remember as a Boy Scout, campouts in the area that is now the Magic Kingdom.
No kidding.
I know, that's right where I was camping as a kid.
Wow, how special.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
That's fun.
Wow. So you've seen some changes in the area, Disney property and all?
Right. I feel like Orlando's become a little piece of Los Angeles, but it sure changed. I've enjoyed seeing it all change.
So it was not too big of a career decision to apply for that first job while you were in school at Disney?
Well, I was in school, I did the usual thing at the end of the 4 years of applying at the usual places, and I got offers from a couple of places that didn't sound very interesting, like Martin Marietta, now Lockheed Martin, and the phone company. And but then this is a fun little story. I had worked at the park, of course, and I had supervisors who had been tapped on the Epcot project to go out to Los Angeles. They remembered that I was an engineering student graduating, and just being thoughtful, one of them, Jane Jackson, made a phone call and arranged that clipped to my time card when I came to work, there was a little note that says, go upstairs and pick up a ticket. Ticket to what? So I go upstairs and it's a ticket to Los Angeles to an interview at what was at the time Wed Enterprises,
Wow.
WDI today. And I didn't ask her to do that. I wasn't, she was just being thoughtful. So I flew out there, first time on an airplane.
There's thoughtful and there's thoughtful. That's above and beyond. That's awesome.
Right. So I interviewed and I was made a job offer, and it sounded like a whole lot more fun than working for the phone company or a defense contractor.
Wow. And I understand you have two brothers, right, that
I
are
do.
also engineers?
They both graduated from UCF with the same degree every 3 years, knocked one out. Our dad was an engineer, so we all just kind of kept going. And then over the years, it evolved. One brother worked at Lockheed Martin, another one worked at Disney and Universal in a project management role. But then we all came back together, same degree, 3 brothers, one company, and we worked together for most of the last 40 years.
That's pretty convenient, having the same last name.
Yes.
That's powerful. I work with both of my brothers as well. So
It can really work out because we each have different strengths. And so one brother, Dan, he's all engineer.
Yeah.
I have another brother, Steve, who he understands people and agreements and how projects get done and brings people together. And they call me the designated risk taker because I'm the one who started the business and figures out where the money is going to come from and how to hang on to enough of it to make sure we can keep making payroll.
Wow. Well, I understand you started at managing at WED in 1979, around the same time as your fellow TIA master, Linda Alcorn. We had a chance to talk to her. That was some pretty early days in terms of its scope and size of the organization.
Right. It was looking back on it. It was a really wonderful beginning. It was a great way to start a career. It was a great group of people. We were all young and enthusiastic and too inexperienced to know what we were getting into, and that it was more than we should have been asked to take on. I think even the people who gave us our assignments didn't realize what they were asking of us, but it made a lot of people's career, and he taught us how to work and how to make big projects come together.
Yeah. I mean, I got no big deal. Just make the 21st century happened on October 1st, 1982, right?
I used to say, well, is there life after Epcot? Is there life after October 1st, 1982? We all just, that was just seemed like an unattainable goal, and then one day it happened.
Wow. Well, so you were on no small project. The American Adventure was probably one of the more ambitious undertakings, right? I mean, that was really kind of the anchor to the park at the very back of the park.
Right. It was one anchor, Spaceship Earth was the other anchor, and I remember it being said, no pressure, but those two have to open.
No kidding.
And it was much bigger than anybody expected it to be in terms of what it asked of the technology available at the time. Very clearly, if everybody had recognized, if the people who assigned me to it had recognized what they were asking of me, they wouldn't have assigned me. It was luck in my case that I was assigned and that I was able to hang on to it. In fact, there are some very memorable moments when it was called into questions, should we find somebody else to do this job? One relatively early, and then one.
Were you the one asking the question, or was that someone else?
Well, I was asking the question the whole time, but I knew I was going to do it. I didn't know exactly how, but I was fortunate to have been somehow born with the self-confidence to not smart enough to know better. So, but early on, there were people who wisely asked, we need to get somebody more experienced. And I think mostly because they couldn't find anybody else, and I was already far enough into it, and I seemed to be getting the job done, that they let it go for a while. And then there was a time closer to opening day, very memorable. We had something to do every day, every minute was scheduled, and I was told, no, you're not going to do that today. You're going to sit in the conference room all day, and you're going to meet with this guy that was sent out by the studio, meaning Ron Miller at the time. And
Walt's son-in-law.
Yes, his job was to figure out if I could get this job done or if they needed to replace me at the 11th hour. And I immediately saw it as an opportunity because I had heard of this guy and I knew he was very good. It was David Snyder. He's kind of a father figure in our part of the business. And he interviewed me in a way I'd never been interviewed before. He asked all the right questions, smart questions, and I was able to give him enough of the answers to instill some confidence in him. He let me keep the job, which was really, really.
Congratulations.
Yes. Yeah. And there's a funny twist to that too, because here 40 years later, the same guy was calling me on the phone saying, you need to buy an airplane. And it was because he remembered from that interview, I assume, all those many years ago, that I happened to have learned how to fly a plane when I was a kid. And he knew that I was passionate about that and that I had probably let it go for most of my life because I was too busy or too broke to do it. And so he called me repeatedly. It was important to him. And so I bought an airplane, and it's the thing that I do now that I enjoy most. So I really appreciate that guy twice.
Yeah.
Saved my job, and then he remembered well enough to help me do something I knew I needed to do.
Wow. Well, in the off chance that anyone watching hasn't experienced the American Adventure or just hasn't been backstage and understand, do you mind just explaining kind of the scope and the complexity of why that's not just a normal stage show with?
So figures from American history, rendered as audio animatronic figures. But the hard part was that they all needed to appear on stage at different times, and there wasn't enough room for them up there, so you had to put them somewhere. The set pieces, the entire set pieces, had to be moved somewhere to make room for the others. And so there's this big dance going on with machinery underneath the stage and underneath of the audience. Big carriages moving massive amounts of steel carrying these set pieces. And the audience doesn't know anything about it. Of course, they're absorbed in the show as they should be. But we like to say there's another show going on underneath. It was quite the accomplishment at the time. A lot of energy, a lot of hydraulics, a lot of motion control systems, a lot of things that could go wrong, a lot of potential collision points and so forth. So it was a great introduction to control systems engineering at a very early age.
One of these days, you have to sneak me either backstage or under the stage to kind of see that show behind the show or underneath the show.
I've only been back 2 or 3 times in all the years since, but when I go in there, there's a feeling that there's a piece of me in there. It's, I grew up in that building during a period of about a year while we made it work.
So no PTSD when you go back in the building.
No, but there's memories.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a form of that. I don't know, but it's not a negative thing. It's a positive thing.
That's great.
It reminds me of all the relationships, all the great people that I worked with, which of course is what it's all about.
Yeah, you guys are so humble. You had kind of a dream team on that. I know Linda mentioned that, or in Linda's husband, Steve,
Yes.
talks about it a little bit in his book, right?
Right. He wrote a book that talks quite a bit about bringing that very show online. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very hard together.
You any war stories that other than sleeping in uncomfortable situations?
There's lots of them. We often did sleep out there because we were working roughly 16 hours a day. In fact, not long ago, Linda sent me a copy of something she dredged up out of a folder somewhere. It was back in the days when we wrote memos instead of emails. I had written a memo that just matter-of-factly said to my staff of about 8 people, from now on, we're working 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. And these are the hours that everybody's expected to be here. And everybody just matter-of-factly, without a question, did it. We all jokingly, stopped shaving because we said, well, that'll save us about 3 minutes a day. But it was intense. And sometimes we did sleep right there on site. I remember one time I was asleep underneath of a hydraulic lift. And I woke up because somebody was shouting and they were saying fire. And the lift that I was sleeping under was on fire above my head. So there was a fire extinguisher right there. So I got up, put the fire out, went back to sleep. that was kind of a memorable event. But,
well, I think of you guys as kind of the greatest generation of Imagineers, not just for pulling off something of the scope and complexity of Epcot, but almost simultaneously Tokyo Disneyland. But then really leaving Disney and starting an entire new industry, what eventually kind of helped create the Themed Entertainment Association. How long after Epcot's opening did you start up the company?
Right after. There was, obviously right after Epcot, there were a succession of layoffs. And I remember the department kept getting cut in half again and again and again until there were only about 6 of us left. And I got a phone call. And I remember picking up the phone and saying, after having been told there would be another layoff, he said, what do you think about that? And I said, let me think about it. And I didn't let go of the phone. I picked it right back up and I said, it's not fun anymore. There's nothing to do around here. I'm leaving. And I had already had inquiries about other work that I could do in very related industries, working with some of the people that I'd worked on at Epcot. So it was easy, and I had, I think, 10 weeks of accumulated vacation because I hadn't taken any vacation the entire time I'd been there. So that was the runway that allowed me to launch a business.
Wow.
So that was the start right there after Epcot.
And was that yourself or any other partners?
In the beginning, it was just me.
Wow.
And as I got busier on projects, I bring in one person and another person, and then I had an opportunity briefly to work as a part of a bigger organization, but then decided to keep it as myself and just kept bringing more good people in.
Wow.
I was very, very fortunate in the beginning. I don't think I can give myself a whole lot of credit, but somehow managed to pick a lot of great people to work with, some of them who are still working with me to this day.
Wow. And then I imagine Disney would have been one of your clients, rolling from Epcot ultimately to Disney MGM Studios.
From the beginning, yes. Disney MGM Studios, and briefly before that, Disney for a while decided to sell their talents to pavilions at expos.
Oh, yeah.
We worked on Expo 86.
Okay.
In fact, Linda also worked on that, and some of the other people that I worked with at Epcot. So that was the first thing that I went back to Disney.
So you're going from building Disney's permanent World's Fair to an actual World's Fair.
Right. So did that for a while, and then the Norway Pavilion at Epcot was one of the first expansions of Epcot. Worked on that, and that took me from show control systems into true ride control systems. at American Adventure, there had been aspects of that which were ride control like, but but animated figures were riding on it. So I was able to segue into real ride control with Norway Pavilion, where there's a whole nother level of safety concerns. It's not machinery safety, it's people safety. And it's really been, the rest of my career has been kind of defined by watching the evolution of how we make rides safe. It's come a long way.
Yeah, and that was no small deal, right? The kind of reversible indoor-outdoor flume, or going backwards. The Maelstrom bones are still the bones of the Frozen.
Yes.
A Raptor, actually.
Yep. That was
Still the e-ticket, if not one of the hardest tickets to get at Epcot. Pretty popular.
popular ride. At the time, it was considered to have lots of complexities.
Yeah. Wow. And then, that was a pretty busy era, not just at that park. The anchor to the park, the Great Movie Ride, I'm still pretty sad, frankly, about that not being there. But that was a pretty ambitious undertaking. Kind of, I guess that would have been the spaceship Earth of Disney MGM Studios, right?
But the nature of that control system was advanced at the time also.
Yeah. Wow. And then when did Universal come calling?
Right after MGM Studio Tour, so we opened in Universal Orlando in '89, sounds about right, and we worked on numerous of those attractions, some of which are gone.
Jaws,
Jaws is gone,
one
right.
that got away.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
I think it's still going in Japan, so we can do that. But that was kind of pretty signature kind of stuff for the opening day Universal Orlando, if I remember.
And it sure was. Earthquake. So long ago, I should remember them better. There have been quite a few.
Well, you're blocking some stuff out of.
I remember the people that I worked with.
Yeah.
More than the rides that I worked on.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Tell me about. As far as company growth, was it really just responding to opportunities? Was there any strategery involved? Was there any kind of catalytic people that really kind of accelerated the growth?
There was a fellow, Ed Foyer, at mechanical engineer at Disney, who had some big ambitions, and I got to work with him for a while, and I learned a lot as a result. That was a good experience. There were people I worked with in that era that I had worked with at Disney in the beginning. Joe Wilson comes to mind. Jane Jackson, I learned a lot of different types of things, not engineering things, but about how projects get done and how people accomplish things successfully. Learned from both good and bad examples, mostly good examples, almost overwhelmingly good examples. I was fortunate to have a lot of great people to work with.
Well, I've been to your totally charming setting in downtown Winter Garden, where your office is in that historic building. But what was it that opened the door or prompted you to expand operations to Asia?
There was a fateful phone call back in about 2000. Universal's leadership said they were going to build a park in Shanghai. That didn't actually happen, but they said by contract they're going with the Chinese partner. They would have to do a lot of work in China. So he suggested that I get on the plane and go figure out how to do that. And that sounded intriguing, and so that's what we set out to do. It turned out the next thing that Universal did in Asia was in Singapore, but knowing that eventually there would be something big in China, probably Shanghai, we decided to open an office in Shanghai, and we built did some of the design, built most of the equipment for Singapore in Shanghai, really as an exercise to learn how to do business in China, because doing business in China is completely different from doing business in the United States in an awful lot of ways. It was kind of like checking everything that I'd learned about doing business at the border and starting over again.
Wow.
Which was kind of probably part of the reason I did it, because it was so challenging. I really enjoyed that learning process. I used to hear people say culture is all that matters, and I, as an engineer, didn't know what that meant. Well, I've learned a lot about what that means, and it's really all that matters.
And learned the hard way.
Yeah. Yeah, and so there's big cultural differences in how work gets done there. And
Oh, that phrase, culture eats strategy for lunch.
yes, yeah, it's true.
Wow.
It's true. As an old engineer, that was a hard lesson for me, but it's true.
And I understand, I mean, about half of your team is still in Asia.
Yes.
And half in the US.
We've now built so many theme parks over there with that team that they are just an extension of our Florida team. So,
Wow.
and they're supporting us in the design of the current project, Epic Universe in Orlando. So, lots of very capable people over there who we have complete faith in and really appreciate.
Wow. Any advice for those either wanting to start their, kind of venture out from being an employee to, I guess, self-employed or an employer, that you would look back at your younger self and wish you could give yourself advice?
There's a lot of challenges. I think the bottom line is at the end of the week or the month or whatever, you're the guy that has to make payroll. In our industry, revenue stream is not very predictable. But when people want to buy a business, at the top of the list is they want a business with a predictable revenue stream.
Mm-hmm.
We have anything but in this industry because we build big theme parks and we do nothing for a while. We wait for the next one. You have to hang on to those people in between. And so if you're lucky enough to have made some money at the end of one project, you have to spend that money hanging on to the people waiting for the next project, or there won't be a next project for you. Be very positive and be surrounded by a team of positive people. One of the things that made business possible for me was I started early enough that I didn't have children that I would have to pay to support. And I knew I had a family I could fall back on, and I knew I was surrounded by people who were as determined to make it all a success as I was. It's really all about the people you're surrounded by.
Mm.
And being willing to fail. You've got to be willing to be a risk taker and fail again. Failure and success are companions, not opposites.
Well, Glenn, any advice for any of the incoming, whether they're students or themed environment fans that would say, hey, I'd really love to follow in your footsteps, get in this industry, have anywhere close to the imprint, the impact that you've had? Any advice to them?
Engineers, we all like technology. And that's great. It's essential if you want to be an engineer. But engineers also have to write and communicate and motivate and negotiate. And they'll be so much more successful if they can understand the commercial side of the business, the fact that in the end, money makes the world go around, or at least a large part of it. And so if we can design the most amazing thing, but if it's unaffordable and nobody wants it, it doesn't matter. So developing the soft skills and the commercial skills and the communication skills in addition to the technical skills will make an engineer stand up. We have worked with a lot of engineers, and it's perfectly fine if 2/3 of the engineers are just all about the technology, because we need that. But there also needs to be about 1/3 of them that have the soft skills, and they may become the project managers or the ones who go out and find the work and figure out how to do it successfully and profitably.
Oh. Well, Glenn, thank you so much as a TMS for your time, your generosity of contributing, pouring back into the industry and the next generation. It's really just an honor to be with you today.
I'm happy to be here.
Welcome, everybody. Great to see you. And it seems like just yesterday we were chatting that up. We've got a great group of participants here and a couple of really great questions. So let me just roll right into it and make sure we get to all the questions. My eye just goes right to the maps though you have behind you. Is that a collection? Is there significance? Are those all your projects?
This is our conference room, and the maps are of each of the theme parks where we've done a number of projects. And so we list the projects that we've worked on next to each map. It's just a way to talk about what we've done.
Love it. I'm used to seeing all the pub shots and the beautiful photography, but I think the maps and it sounds like you've got so much to list that you got to do a map and a listing of all the different projects in each park. That's pretty impressive.
A lot of years, a lot of memories.
Awesome. Well, we've got first question from Andre. Wanted to first of all congratulate you on that epic career. Like I said, being part of the greatest generation, in my opinion. That's any Epcot Imagineer, man. That's just comes with the territory before you even get to the level of TEA master. So that now you're just turning it to 11, kind of whole other level there. But wanted to know what are the biggest challenges in some of your current projects? No low balls, no softballs here.
There's the technology, and then there's the practicality of making a job feasible, and that's two different types. The answers are very different. The technology, and I'm surrounded by a great group of people who are masters of that technology now more than I am, and they always find a way. What are the biggest challenges right now? What comes to my mind first is budget and schedule, trying to meet the client's requirements.
Those darn BSs just that never go away.
Yeah, really, that's the one that is toughest for everybody. Working on site and the delay, because that's the phase of the project that we're on a majority of our projects right now is in the field, and field conditions are often very difficult, and there's the matter of,
we won't mention any specific projects, but
right, but you get to the site and the things that you expected to have in place by this time are not there, or the fact that, for example, we interface with a lot of other people's equipment. We write software to handle that interface. Often you arrive on site and you realize that the other guy didn't exactly write his software to talk to your software or the wires to match. And so then you are redoing things in the field at the last minute, or our staff is. So for me, budget and schedule, I would say for most of our staff right now, it's the realities of the equipment coming together in the field and it not being exactly as it was expected to be.
Awesome. Good old BS never goes away. Hey, we've got Steve Birket asking a couple of zingers for you. Again, you're not getting any softballs with this crowd, man. So the question is, what's next with ride and show safety?
What's next with ride and show safety? Ride and show safety has been moving, advancing, getting better ever right from the beginning. In the very beginning, it was, we'd all put our heads together and think, is this safe enough? What are the things that could go wrong here, and how have we taken care of that? In other words, it was an informal process, and we put all of our heart and our mind into it to make sure that it was right, but we didn't have a structured process for that. The process has become progressively more and more structured, and I'm sure it will only continue to do so. And that's fundamentally good. It's the way that it needed to be. It's also stifling sometimes because of the amount of paperwork that you have to generate to prove that you have done all of that and that you've done it in the way that it's prescribed. So both the standards and the process to implement those standards is constantly progressing and will only get better. But
well, I can only assume that documentation is as onerous it is better on the front side of a lawsuit or an accident than on the back side, right?
Right. There's a certain amount of that documentation that is because there's people who know that they may someday have to defend a lawsuit.
Right.
But the process it's fundamentally correct. And it was brought into our industry from other industries such as transportation, aerospace, and it's all for the right reasons. And we completely support it.
Yeah. Safety, courtesy, show efficiency. I remember day one, Disney University, 4 keys. Don't kill anybody. Generally good rule of thumb, right?
Yeah. That's been the biggest concern my whole life. I mean, we do a lot of things. There's some creativity to it. There's a lot of it that's fun, but then there's this one part that's just always on your mind, which is we got to make sure we don't hurt anybody.
Right. Yeah, it's a business of fun, but it's serious business too. There's a lot of liability, a lot at stake. I've learned that particularly in some overseas theme parks where I kind of felt like I needed additional uh, coverage on my life insurance before I boarded some of these ride vehicles or entered into some of these extreme situations. Second half of Steve's questions, what's the most difficult part about starting a business in China? Got a lot of experience over a few decades now. Was that initial cultural hurdle that you talked about? Or?
Right. The cultural hurdle, the fact that the lessons that you learn running a business in the United States, it's very different over there. I mean, people are people everywhere you go, and that's the good thing. The relationships count, but the cultural implementation of the relationships is different. In China, I could talk for too long about this. Somebody should ask me offline because my answer will be lengthy. China, it's a remarkable place. They've come so far in such a short period of time, but because of that, they had to implement things that evolved in over 100 years or more in the United States happened in 10 or 20 years in China. And so the rough edges have not been worn off of all of their laws and rules and so forth. So a lot is more difficult and has to be learned from the beginning. So I shouldn't talk anymore. We'll take up all the time because China's a big topic. But also going to China has been, that was something I could never have anticipated in my life that would happen. But it has become one of the most significant, memorable, enriching things in my life. And I'm so glad that it happened because I've learned so much just as a result of being in China so much. Great people.
Awesome. Well, someone else was kind of piggybacking on that, just asking to speak more to the expectations and challenges of doing work in just other cultures in general. I mean, are any specific example of kind of that kind of failure to translate, cultural disconnect, any anecdotes or unique stories there?
Well, when you go into another country, you start by reading the books. And now I've got a shelf full of books and I look at them and smile and say, attending the School of Hard Knocks after reading the books was necessary because it's not all in the books. But the first thing you read in the books is very important. We in the Western culture is rules-based. The Eastern culture is relationship-based. And you need to figure out what that means, why it's important, and how that's going to affect your everyday life. It's a good thing, though. It was just a lot of fun learning so much about doing business in China. And I've only scratched the surface. I can never be Chinese, but I've learned what a lot of the challenges are, and I've made a lot of friends. And there's a lot of people over there that I can now turn to and say, what do I do now? And know that I'm getting, people would ask me in the beginning, well, how do you know you can trust them? They're people just like us, and I do trust them. There are people over there that I trust every bit as much as I trust my best friends here in this country. So that's not a problem. Great people.
Yeah, that foundational relationship is so powerful, again, regardless of geographies, right? Whether it's in our families or in our country or on our planet. But it's just such a secret weapon of success for sure. Another great question. If you're a graduating student today, whether, emerging engineer or any of the other disciplines, would you recommend that they work at a big company, small company, just stand outside the door at Imagineering and fail to leave until you're evicted by a security guard? What's your general advice on that topic?
My impression is that some people are going to feel better and want to be in a bigger company because things are better defined. You have maybe less to worry about. It's more predictable, maybe. Smaller company, there's more risks. Smaller company has less staying power. We've managed to stay, but it wasn't always assured. So I can imagine some people saying they want the security of the bigger company. But also there's a lot more flexibility and opportunity, I feel, in a smaller company because you can stand out. We tend to throw people right into the fire, and a lot of people like that and succeed with it. And that, although that was the remarkable thing that happened to me at Disney, I don't think it's the norm in a larger company. In a larger company, you're probably going to come up through a process where you're going to work on one thing for a while and then another thing, and only get the bigger jobs when you've gone quite a ways. So there are very big differences, and I think it's a matter of individuals' personality as to which they'll prefer.
That's great. Not the same pat answer for every individual. Brendan asks, how did you get into the NFPA Technical Committee on Special Effects, and what's your kind of experience been like being on that particular committee?
That's an interesting question. So how did it begin? There was a big project that involved a lot of flame and pyrotechnics in Las Vegas. It was the Treasure Island Buccaneer Bay show. We learned a lot on that show, worked with a good group of people. That was about the time that the committee was formed. And so there were several people involved in that project who just kind of naturally became members of the committee. It's been an interesting experience for me because, you know, that's a relatively small committee compared to some of them at the FPA. I am, with what I've learned about how difficult it is to create standards using a committee. I wonder, you know, the National Electric Code comes from the NFPA, and there are committees within committees within committees. That's a lot of people, and it's a difficult process because there's a lot of momentum, and I understand completely there's changes that maybe could be made or should be made, but then there's a lot of people who don't want those changes to occur too quickly because it would make it difficult to stay in business. So making changes or modernizing things is difficult. It's kind of a stifling process. But there is one change that we were able to make as a part of that committee that I'm pleased with, because it made the control of pyrotechnics, made it more possible to do it in a safer way. And it was just one little change, but it took years to get that little change through. So it's an important process, but it's a stifling process.
Thanks for going through the process and being patient and making the impact. I do miss that show. It's really a sad shell of what it was in terms of that street sphere extravaganza, especially with the Mirage going by the wayside now, the old volcano. So with your experience, do you think that the new Universal Park, what Universal Park? I don't know, but will revolutionize with new control and automation technologies? Are you allowed to discuss?
Probably can't talk about anything that is happening, but you know, the general drift in technology has been toward more embedded systems, which gives you a lot more freedom. You know, putting the computer into the thing, it allows you to be much more interactive, and so there will be a lot more interactives in every new park. That's in general the direction that things go. Probably can't say more than that.
All right. Hey, I've got my fellow historian, Skipper Freddie, my co-host on Themed Attraction, is asking a couple of great historical questions. One is, I know we're just World Expo geeks when we talk back about Expo 86 Vancouver. I think he's asking from perspective as a kid who grew up near and around from Vancouver and went to Expo 86 weekly. Any lessons learned from that work, as you know, that's something more of a temporary 6-month install versus a 20-year, 3-4 decade thing like an American Adventure?
I think my biggest takeaway from Expo 86 was that everybody knows this, and I probably should have known it at the time, but it's not the technology. It's, the creative technology is an absolutely essential part, but Spirit Lodge was just such a great show. And there was just one little piece of technology, and all we had to do was coordinate the timing, and we did that. We did our job. But that show was fantastic and moving, and it was otherwise such a simple thing. So the spark that created that show, it didn't come from the engineers. There was a certain amount of technology, but it just impressed me how much they could do with how little at that one particular show.
Yeah, pure magic. Still miss it at Knott's. the Mystery Lodge incarnation. Hoping you help bring it back one of these days. Again, back on that historical route, kind of comparing and thinking about working at Imagineering and Epcot, how does that compare to running, your own firm at Birket Engineering? What do you miss most, least about Imagineering? What's just that overall compare contrast like being part of that larger Imagineering team versus your own?
Well, making the change to running a business changed everything for me. I miss the hands-on engineering. Running a business is all about money in and money out and keeping the money flowing and making sure that you don't ever come up without any money. This is not an easy
Cash
industry.
flow. Whoever
Yeah.
thought that would be
Right.
the thing on your forehead.
Right. And understanding the difference between profitability and cash flow. You can
Right.
be technically making a profit, but if there's no money at the bank when you need to spend it on little important things like payroll, it doesn't matter if you're profitable.
Right.
Yes, running a business
Oxygen
is
in
a
the
whole
tank.
different deal. Yeah, oxygen in the tank. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's consumed me too much, and too much of the last half of my life has been keeping a business going. And of course, I'm glad I did it. And going to Asia, I wouldn't have missed it for anything. But I do feel bad that I got gradually, progressively more removed from the technology. And so as I try to work a little less, I've passed, some people would say I've passed retirement age. And so I'm still here at work, but I go home and I work on little projects that involve little bits of technology that makes me feel good just to be working with my hands again.
Well, as a fellow business owner, I really appreciate you bringing that up, because I think a lot of times we get into this because of passions and kind of our natural wiring or talent or curiosity, but not a lot of us were about worrying about payroll.
People used to say, or I said to myself when I first went into business, why am I doing this? And it's because I wanted to work on fun projects with good people, and that happened. And so for that reason, I'm very glad that I was in business and that I endured the difficulties of being in business, because I have been able to work on just a whole lot of great projects with really great people. It's the people. That's what we all do this for, whether it's the people coming through the gate or the people that you work with on the projects. But the thing that has enriched my life most is all the good people that I've worked with over the years. So having been in business helped me do that. So I'm good with it.
Awesome. Well, talking about people, what are particular qualities specifically that make kind of an engineering oriented individual stand out and succeed in their career beyond technical expertise and experience?
Well, as I realized I said when we talked earlier, having the communication skills and the commercial mindset sure helps. A lot of engineers don't focus on that, and that's good because we need all those guys too. But if you can be an engineer who also understands the money, people skills, how to bring people together and get a job done and make money, you'll stand out, because that's not in general what engineers set out to do.
Yeah, interesting. Another question regarding kind of how do you navigate the left versus the right brain challenges of working with the creative teams, because you're not always just working with one hemisphere of brain activity.
Right. It's important to have both.
Handy to have both lobes fully intact, right? Those lobotomies are never helpful.
For me, a technique that I hope I have used over the years to encourage success on projects is the art of asking the right questions, because I don't usually know the answers. I may or may not know the answers. Probably don't. I'm surrounded by people a lot smarter than me, but knowing the right questions and when to ask them, that's something I saw. There were a few people early in my career who were able to do that. They had this uncanny ability to ask the right question at the right time and make everybody think, and then all of a sudden light bulbs went on and the project moved forward in a better way. So I try to be that guy sometimes. Sometimes I'm able to do that. That's an important quality.
Yeah, quite often that's an unheralded gift, really, to
Right,
facilitate and draw the solution out of people.
because then you can quietly smile and back out. And it's like, there's a line in the Tao Te Ching that says something about a leader who, when the leader does his job, the people say, we did it all ourselves. Because, in other words, you can just kind of fade out and realize they're on it.
Preach it, brother. That's great. That's a jewel and a diamond right there. Hey, someone's asking about your charity work as a pilot today.
It's a fun thing.
Yeah.
And I just fell into it totally by chance. But when I finally bought the airplane and I put it in a hangar, the guy in the hangar next door, one day he comes over and he looks at my airplane and he walks around it and he says, "Could fit a lot of puppies in this airplane." He says, "Would you fly with me next Sunday to Alabama? We need to bring back about 24 puppies and we need another plane." And I'm thinking, puppies? What is this about? It turns out that there are places in the United States where there are more puppies than there are people to take them. And there are places in the United States where there are more people than there are puppies. And so
wow,
I've gotten into flying to one place to bring the puppies to the other place so that more puppies can live instead of being euthanized in a shelter somewhere. And I used to do it. I did a string of flights, about 20 or so of them. And then got so busy with it, I said, "Yeah, you got to put me on backup status." So now I only do it about once a month, but it's a lot of fun. You work with a lot of good people and you save puppies and you get to fly an airplane. So
that's a whole other, we do puppy fostering too. We're driving all over Southern California, but never thought about airlifting the puppies around. So
it turns out the puppies, if you put them in a van and you put them on the road for 12 hours, if one is sick, they all get sick, and it's not a good thing to coop them up for that long. But if you put them in an airplane, you can do the same thing in 2 or 3 hours, and amazingly, they all just go to sleep as you take off. I don't know, the drone or the engine, the change in altitude, they all just pretty much lay down and go to sleep. Except there's always one or two who want to get up in the front with you. But there's other people on the airplane. Their job is to keep the puppies off the pilot.
I love it. I think I saw that in an Elvis movie once, right? One of the, let's see, Johnny, our very own Johnny D, one of our senior creative directors, asked, through all your roles and years of experience, what's your favorite part of the design process?
Probably the concepting, the brainstorming in the beginning, when you figure out how you're going to do it, and then you go through iterations and improve it after that. That's also the challenging one, because it's at that earliest stage when you have to figure out how much it's going to cost and hope you got that part right, because then you have to live with it afterward. But then the one that is the most memorable and builds the relationships with the people is the one in the field, when it all comes together and you're under the most pressure and you have to work the hardest. And it's for me, most of that work was a long time ago, but I see our own people, I would say, going through it, not in a negative way though, because it's exhausting, but that's where it all comes together and you feel the most satisfaction, and you work with people that become your friends for the rest of your life.
Now back to relationships. All right, another question. How has your engineering expertise evolved considering the continuous advancement of technology?
Some of it, I have to confess, has left me behind. In my office, I have an old relay that's about this big. And of course, now you can put the solid state equivalent of a relay, thousands of them on a chip. I mean, we used to design at the circuit level and, building custom modules to do things. Now very few people design at the circuit level. Everybody designs at the module or you can buy so much more that's already done. And that's the way it should be. And that allows us to do lots more fascinating things. And so the technology just keeps evolving with AI. It's just amazing to think where it's already going.
Yep. Turning it to 11, whole nother level. Eric Lopez asking, how do you balance creativity and technical precision in your projects? Any specific examples you can think of that kind of balancing act solution?
to me, it feels all the same. I'm not sure. Maybe
So
an
you do every
example.
day, all day, huh?
Well, it seems like that's what I'm always doing.
Yeah, makes
But
sense.
I don't know how to just describe it.
See, you mentioned that you enjoy tinkering with technology in your free time. Any examples of fun personal projects that let you explore new skills?
Um, I'm renovating a bunch of houses right now, making Airbnbs out of them, just because that's not that kind of technology that you were thinking about. It's just getting hurt, getting dirty, working hard, and
Yeah, work with your hands.
yeah. I have a lot of dated technology from years ago that I look at it and I say, I remember when I wanted to do this with that, but who'd do that today? Nobody. So I would like to, time permitting, well, I'd like to learn some of the more recent design tools. Who knows what I'll have time for, but right now I'm not working with any high tech electronics.
Get enough of that during the daylight hours. Huh?
Well, it's not that I got enough of it. It's just there's only so many hours in a day.
Sure. Let's see. What types of rides or shows would never have been possible to build years ago? What excites you most about the future of attractions? Just big picture, blue sky, horizon line. What's
all
next?
the real-time interactives that are possible now and that are going to become more possible as the AI finds its way into entertainment. I can barely imagine it, but everything is going embedded, except there's a piece of the old school technology that will probably, in the safety area, those systems need to be deterministic. There can't be any question of what's going to come out the other end of the software and hardware. So the old programmable logic controllers and associated software will probably continue in the areas where life safety is an issue. That evolves more slowly, as it probably should.
Mm-hmm. Great question about the Themed Entertainment Association. How long have you been a member? Have you found it helpful in moving your business forward?
Oh, absolutely. We've
Good
been
answer.
a member. Yeah. Well, we've been a member. We were probably a charter member. I remember when Monty decided that we needed an organization, and I thought, yeah, that's right. I wonder what'll become of that. And look at what it's become. It's just where everything happens in the themed entertainment industry. My brother is the one that has embraced it the most, past international president, and it has allowed him to connect us with so many businesses internationally. Next month, I think he's going on a trade mission with a group of others from the TEA to Asia to look at possible projects there, and that kind of thing is only possible through the TEA.
Awesome. Marlene asks, just said thanks for the inspiration. And on behalf of those of us entering the themed entertainment field, is there anything that you wish you would have known earlier on in your career, or that you'd do differently if you could go back in time in that DeLorean?
The thing that I couldn't have imagined is just how up and down this business is. And honestly, I don't mean to be negative, but it's hard to make money in this business. You make money and then you lose money. And
not for the faint of heart.
Yeah, right.
It's a white knuckler.
Right. But you get to work on big projects with great people. And the beauty of it is everybody's interested in your work. And although you can't talk about it while it's happening, you can talk about most of it after it's finished. And it's just been a great industry to be a part of. I wouldn't have missed it for anything.
Last couple of questions. What ride or show attraction impressed you the most growing up? Any favorites? What rides, attraction do you enjoy now as a guest?
Most recent one that impressed me a whole lot was Pirates at Shanghai Disney. I just went through that and I just said, this is a game changer. This is just spectacular. There's times when you're not sure what you're looking at. Is it video or is it real? Where is that? It's just,
is it real? Is it Memorex?
Yes.
What's going on?
It was impressive. You know, the early attractions that impressed me, I mentioned Spirit Lodge. Um,
How about
What's that?
childhood stuff? Going way back machine.
if you go way back, there wasn't much. As a kid, there was only Disneyland, and it was in California. And I figured I'll never get that far west. And then Disney came to Florida.
Yeah.
But by then I was, you know, high school age or almost, and only went to Disney once as a kid, and then I got a job there. And so I was always, really, my entire theme park experience has always been either working at the park in my early years or working on a park in my last 40 years. So I don't have a normal, I was not a person to go to theme parks. I'm a person to build theme parks. So I don't have the normal perception of theme parks.
Not the normal relationship with the parks.
I have an abnormal relationship with theme parks. That's true. But it's been a fabulous one. It's just, you know, it's been, you know, what better could have happened? What a career. It's just been great.
I'm sure you've gotten asked this question. It's sometimes a tough one to answer. Your favorite child, your favorite baby, favorite thing you worked on in your career?
Well, it has to be American Adventure. Those were my
Special.
formative years, and
Your firstborn is always special, right? No.
Oh yeah, and it was such a big project, so intense. It just was all consuming. It was our life, and we just didn't know anything else. We literally asked ourselves, "Is there life after October 1st, 1982?" Because we were just so consumed in the process of bringing those attractions together at Epcot that there was nothing else. But it was just so great to look back on. I wish for everybody, as hard as we worked, I wish for everybody that they have an experience like that, because you carry it with you the rest of your life.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely, I think the Old People Mover, Tomorrowland Transit Authority, and the American Adventure are my two must-dos every time I'm in Florida. So good job on that one. Okay, one final question. Any final advice for building an impactful career?
Surround yourself with good people, let them do their job, trust them, and work really hard.
Awesome. And Glenn, thanks so much for your time and for being there and just the gift of the brain damage you've incurred and as a TEA master, all that you give back to the organization and feeding into the next generation. Man, I can't really thank you enough.
Well, I have a lot of people to thank from all throughout my career. Enjoy being here.
Awesome. Thanks everyone for joining.